Good evening. All set. I'd like to call a meeting to order. This is the November 13th, 2013 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. Moving on to business. Continued from a prior hearing, Kazanjian Enterprises, concerning DEP file number 2060719. Project location is 150 Wood Street, and it's construction of a commercial building, retaining wall, pavement, drainage system, associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within a wetland buffer and bordering vegetated wetlands.
Good evening, I'm Steve Erickson from North Environmental Services. This is the same plan that was submitted earlier. Pull it up so it's a little bit easier to illustrate what's going on. As you remember, this is a proposal for a buffer zone project. What we were looking at doing is on the intersection of Wood Street and Westford Street, we're looking at putting a couple of commercial buildings here, a bank and an office type building. This area is all sand and gravel. We've got the wetland shown in green on the plan, the erosion control shown in this area, and for conceptual purposes, we're showing the oldest home in Lowell. We are not filing for that at this time. We would like to discuss that with the commission at some point tonight, but this is not part of the filing. Please understand that. The buffer zone is shown in yellow out in this area. What we're proposing would be to cut this area down. The city has asked us to move the entry. It used to be out in the center of the lot. They've asked us to move that further over this way for sight distance. So we've moved that over. That will go right through the area of the existing home. It was our intent to try to move that home at some point in time, relocate it somewhere. Our runoff is being collected through a drainage system, through the entryway. It all flows down toward the bottom where we've got a large infiltration system. So all of that water, that runoff, is being infiltrated into the ground. There's additional infiltration being provided up here. There is an overflow for that runs down here. At the suggestion of the Conservation Commission, we extended the riprap to go to the edge of the wetland area so that if it did overflow, there would not be any erosion because of the size of that slope. To maintain a 25-foot area, a 50-foot buffer area of undisturbed area, excepting for that, we're proposing a retaining wall along the side that you can see in the dark color right in that area. A number of the members were out on site with us. We looked at the trees that were going to be cut. There are half a dozen good-sized trees that will be cut due to the installation of the wall and put in the paving area. We are showing erosion controls, wattles, and silt fence in orange along the edge of the boundary. Regarding the house, and this is a completely separate issue, we're just asking an opinion on that. It would be possible for us to move that house over in this area. We told the city that we would try to keep the house because it is one of the oldest houses, of the oldest house in Lowell. It would be possible for us to put that over here. In order to do that, it would be in the floodplain, and that would require us to change this plan and substantially modify the grading in this area. So I'd like to hold on any questions or any comments on that, but at some point in time, if we could take a few minutes to discuss that, we would like your opinion on that. But our main concern right now is that we've got this small area of parking and a small part of the building that is within the buffer zone. We are infiltrating the roof runoff. We're infiltrating all of the roadway runoff. We remove over 44% of the total suspended solids in compliance with the stormwater management regulations before we infiltrate down in this area and infiltrate up in this area. That is the extent of the project. It is a buffer zone project. There is no impact to the resource area. We are staying 50 feet away from the resource area. With the installation of the wall, there will be no future impact. We've added snow storage areas to the plan, addressed the comments from DEP, and I believe we've addressed all the comments from the commission, and I think we've got a complete plan here right now in compliance with the Wetland Protection Act and the Lowell Wetland Bylaw.
Mr. Erickson, will the retaining wall, will that be elevated above the parking grade?
It will be elevated above the parking grade to prevent, as kind of a guardrail, to prevent any cars from going over the edge, and it also helps to prevent somebody from plowing snow in that direction, because that's not a snow storage area.
Yeah, okay, well, that, I guess that was what I'm leading to, and I guess my main concern with that is, and we all know how these plow operators operate, and, you know, I'm envisioning knocking the thing down the slope into the wetland.
I don't think that will be a problem for a couple of reasons. One is that we've got the dumpsters out in that area, so we need the access to the dumpsters. And the other is that the access behind that building is relatively narrow. So piling snow out in this area, it's not a good idea. And the area where the existing house is will be landscaped area. So that shouldn't be a problem. So I don't think snow storage is going to be a problem there. And we do have designated snow storage areas on the site.
Okay, even though you have a designated snow storage area there to the east, at the first part of that retaining wall, that you don't think that's going to be a problem there?
No, I don't, not at that distance. We've got a decent amount of landscaping that'll go in this area. It's going to have shrubs, trees, and lawn area, so it's not an area that you would typically want to wreck with large piles of snow.
Other than seating, how will that bank be stabilized?
The large bank is existing, is stabilized right now. We're not going to disturb much of that, except for installation of one pipe and the riprap down at the bottom. And that will be hydro-seeded, and we could put matting over that if we do the work in the winter. I expect the work would be in the spring. I don't expect it would be done over the winter, but we could easily put matting along with the hydro-seeding.
So in order to install the retaining wall, there's going to be no activity down on that slope, other than just the riprap area?
It will be up on the top. The machines can't work from down on the bottom. They'll just be up on the top. So there's no need for us to go down near the bottom.
All right, even for footings or anything like that?
No. This will be a reticulated block wall. It doesn't need a footing on it. It can move with the frost.
All right, and I'll come back to the house, I guess. Commissioner Varnum?
It was my impression that that slope really had very little vegetation on it, and that probably the roots of those large trees were what was helping to hold it together. It was basically a sandy slope in my memory, a lot of it. If you remove those trees, I would think that you'd need to have some plan to revegetate that in some fashion.
We could do that if you prefer. We put a conservation mix in there or plant some trees or shrubs. That's not a problem to us. But you're right, it's not a heavily vegetated kind of a slope, but it is vegetated. It does have trees. The trees that we're going to cut through this area, we're not going to take the stumps out. We're just going to leave them there. But if you would prefer that we add a couple of trees and want to condition it that way, that's not a problem to us.
I guess I don't have another question.
Commissioner Lynch?
No question.
Commissioner Beardron?
Past that wall, that's where you'll leave all the stumps in?
I'm sorry?
Where you said you're gonna leave all the stumps in, that'll be past that retaining wall?
We'll leave the stumps in on the other side of the wall. We're going to, clearly they're too close to the wall that will be damaging the roots and they would become a danger. But we'll cut the trees, we'll leave the stumps in place. Those are primarily sugar maples. They're unlikely to sprout like a red maple would. But leaving the stumps in place, we don't get the disturbance that we would get by digging a large hole and excavating those out of there.
Yeah, I think if you leave the stumps in place, I mean, it's sufficient. No further questions?
Commissioner Gordon? Commissioner Lovely?
When we went out there last time, was there a reduction in the number of trees that have been proposed for removal, or is it staying the same?
There are approximately 6 large mature trees that will be removed.
Right. Is that the same as the last time, or is it less, or? Because I know we did ask it to look at the possibility of adjusting the retaining wall, and I'm just curious if...
That's a couple more than we discussed because I had the surveyor stake out the buffer zone and stake out the wall. so you can see exactly what's gonna go now. And we had talked about those 3 main red maples. When I look at it now, I have the buffer zone exactly staked out. There are 6 large trees there. 3 of them are those red maples. One of them, I believe, was an ash, and I think there may have been another oak there. I don't remember all the species.
Okay. And if I recall, I mean, there was a lot more parking spaces, on the earlier plans, and I think you had to readjust the building dimensions a little bit.
We cut that down by the installation of the wall.
Right.
So the parking was cut down a little bit. We still have ample parking for what we need, but it has been reduced.
Right, and there's still driving on both, around the full perimeter of the building?
Yes.
And no impact to the Cultec unit with cars going over that at all, or anything like that?
No, they're designed for H20 loading,
Okay,
so they comply with those regulations. And it is all sand and gravel. It's beautiful soil. The water table is deep.
readily drains.
Yeah, very well drained, excessively well drained.
Okay, no further questions, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about the house, because that's, I mean, it is and it isn't part of this, so, because you gotta,
We want...
other than raising it, you gotta move it, so.
Yeah, we want an opinion from the commission. The city has asked us to try and keep the house if we could, and we'd like to do that. So we could conceivably lift the house up, move it over into this area, but this area is entirely within the floodplain. Obviously, in order to do that, I have to compensate. If I put a cubic foot of soil into the floodplain, I have to take a cubic foot out at the same elevation. In order to do that on this property, I would be cutting into this bank steeply, and I would be increasing the size of that wall to a 10 or 12-foot wall. Now, we're not asking for permission to do that. We would file for that and put all of the appropriate calculations together. What we're asking simply from the commission is an opinion that if you think it's worth it for us to try and save that house and put it there. We've looked at other avenues, try to sell the house, see if anybody wants to buy it, anybody wants to move it. But there isn't a lot of demand for that. As it is, it's very expensive to move it, and just to put it over here, it would have to be completely redone, has to be rewired, put a new foundation in, new insulation, finish the exterior, but the city has asked us to make every effort we can, and that's what we're doing. So we're asking the commission at this time to give us an opinion of what they think, or if it is reasonable to consider putting it in this area. This would require us filling some 6,000 to 7,000 square feet of floodplain area. I don't have the volume of the floodplain, but it appears that we have the area for compensatory storage right through that vegetated slope. The downside is I would have to take out most of that vegetated slope, and I would have to increase the size of that wall, so we'd then have a 10 or 12-foot wall. In a preliminary look, it looks like we could make it, and we could conceivably put the house there. We're just not convinced that it's economically or environmentally a sound approach.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I was late, so I missed this. Why do we have to move the house?
This is one of the oldest houses
In Lowell?
in
The
Lowell.
oldest house, right?
The oldest house in
Okay.
Lowell. The city has asked us to preserve it if we could. It's not listed on the historical register or anything. There's no requirement for us to do that. But they've asked us to look into that. So we'd like to do that, but it interferes. They've asked us to put our exit over right where the house is.
Where the house is, okay,
So we can't leave the house where it is.
okay.
It interferes with the project, it interferes with the roadway. We have the potential to create another lot right over here and to put the house there. We have the room. Environmentally, it may not be the best approach, and you are the people ultimately who are the approving authority. And if you think that that would be valid or worthwhile, then, we could put together a concept, well, we could put together a real plan. This is simply a concept at this time. We're not filing for this. We're asking for your personal opinion if you think it's a viable option.
And demolition isn't an option? Or the city wants you,
Well,
obviously?
demolition is an option.
Okay,
Actually, that is our preferred choice.
Okay.
If we could find a buyer that would put it on another lot, we'd be overjoyed. It would be great. I have no desire to destroy a historical structure, but a historical structure, a 200-year-old building, quite frankly, has to be completely rebuilt. I don't even know the condition of the inside myself, so we know that it's possible to move it. We don't know if physically it would survive the moving
Yeah.
either.
And then-
There are a lot of ifs.
Have you got the ball rolling with the Lowell Historical Commission?
We have spoken to them,
And,
and they have no interest in purchasing it or relocating it. But again, a number of parties have asked us to try to keep it if we could.
so these are just their wishes?
Right? There's no requirement for us to keep it. We're using all of our options.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the sirens. Who was it that does or doesn't want it moved?
Al, maybe you could address that. Al Kazanjian?
Good evening, Alan Kazanjian, Kazanjian Enterprise. It was Aaron Clausen and some of the DPD folks. After our last meeting here in Conservation, they emailed us and with a list of things, of changes they want after 5 or 6 different meetings that we had with them. For some reason, they wanted to change the exit and a few other things, so they come up with the idea of moving the house. We're happy with the original plan that we brought with you, but since then, I guess they want some changes, and that's why we're here now with the changes that we're asking for your advice.
Well, as a person who likes the history of the city, I'd certainly like to see that house saved. That particular lot further down the road there is not ideal, I wouldn't say, due to the elevation of it. As far as in the location, that's a terrible traffic area and everything else. If this is going to be a viable residential structure again. Now, if it's just going to be something that's for show on the outside, that might be a good spot for it. But I would certainly like to see the city find a better spot for it if it is going to be moved.
We did ask them. We're willing to give the house, we're not looking for anything for the house. We're willing to give the house to donate to the city or to whoever else wants the house. We have no problem with that. And believe me, we want to save the house also. The original plan did show saving the house. And with this new plan that they asked us to design, the house, has to be either demolished or moved. And we kind of chose to try to move it.
Are you committed to rebuilding the chimney and making it look authentic as it
Much as
should
we
be?
possibly can, sure.
Certainly the house needs some kind of a savior to help it out. It's been sitting there for a long time, waiting. I don't know, I think the oldest house in Lowell should get some respect. And that little spot there is probably something that could work because of that steep slope that you have for compensation.
Okay, like Mr. Erickson said, we're here to ask for your advice, see if it works for all of you, and we're willing to move it.
I certainly was excited when I heard that you were getting the property and that you were going to save the house. And
Right.
it's a little disappointing now to think that,
Well, like I said, that's what I was trying to, our first original plan did show saving the house. That's what our intentions were.
yeah.
What were the reasons for moving the driveway?
Excuse me?
What were the reasons for moving the driveway?
They said it was too close to the intersection,
Okay.
so they wanted to move, push back somewhat, and we are going to give some some land to the city to make a wider roadway and cut some of that curve pretty much in front of the home that's there now, the house.
Yeah.
I got a possible suggestion here. oftentimes historic preservation and environmental protection butt heads. They follow a similar process in which you try to avoid impacts to the resource. In this case, we're talking about the historic resource. Minimize the impacts if you can't avoid them, and then if you can't avoid them, mitigate. I see two competing interests here, and I, for one, don't think it's a good idea to have that level of flood storage compensation work done to accommodate an old house, despite it being obviously the oldest house, as I understand it, in Lowell. But one thing that could be done is archival quality photo documentation with maybe a placard showing where the house was located with some photos to kind of pay, as Commissioner Varnum pointed out, some maybe respect to the house. But it would allow you to, I guess, pay tribute to that house, you know, at a minimal expense compared to trying to find someone who's willing to assume the cost of moving it, refurbishing it, and taking full responsibility for maintaining it. My take is that maybe doing that type of mitigation, i.e. some sort of photo documentation with maybe a placard in the area where the house was located, might be a happy medium here that would allow us to pay respect to the historic resource without unduly impacting the natural resource, which in this case is the floodplain.
I think that's a great idea. I wish I'd have thought of it. But a photo archive of the piece would be not that difficult to do. We could get the interior, the exterior. We could provide that to the Historical Commission, and we could put some kind of a plaque, grass item that says, this is the site of the oldest house in Lowell, built in whenever it happened to be built, and I like that idea.
I think you definitely should have a plaque in the original spot, but I think it's up to the city here to work with you and actually find a spot for this house, and whether it's this spot here or another spot. I would hate to think that the city of Lowell was just going to let the oldest house in the city go by the wayside. We have spots here and there that house could go.
Well, we're in agreement with you, but we haven't got any takers. And
Well, I don't think it's been highly advertised as yet, because I just saw this proposal a few days ago myself. And I've been thinking about moving that house actually over to Pawtucketville for a number of years now.
well, we've got time to work something out. We'd be happy to sell it for $1 if somebody wants to move it. The whole reason that we're discussing it is that we figured that you would not be impressed with the idea of filling the wetland and destroying the remaining land on the property. And that was what we came for your advice on that. I get the idea that you would prefer that we do not do that. We won't bother. Won't look at that as a valid option. But we'll still look at every other option we can to move the building.
I don't know what the rest of the commission feels about this, but this is really not a natural wetland in that it's been created over the years by poor flow of the Black Brook. And I'm sure when this house was in its heyday, that this was probably a farm field, not a pond. You know, you're pretty much destroying the contours of this site anyway with taking the hill down and putting in a wall, you know, and I don't see any need to keep the rest of that slope, you know, with the extent that you're changing it anyway. And it certainly is relevant, because that wall would have to be changed if you were going to compensate over here. You'd need a new plan for the wall. It'd have to be a lot taller, as you say.
If we were to do this concept, obviously, we would file it separately, and we would provide all the necessary calculations. On a preliminary look, it looks like we can comply with all of the performance standards. It's just that compliance comes at the cost of completely eliminating the upland area that is existing in that. So
That whole region there is a potential landfill, if you recall, where the cap is, that was a sand pit before it was a city dump. You know, it's pure sand, as you pointed out, in that whole area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been moved around. There's not much to save there.
It's not natural. In fact, this area was mined out in the past. We don't know when, but it was obviously a long time ago, but a lot of this area was mined out. I think you're probably right. This probably was a field at one time in the past, and I think the whole area was mined out to create the pond that's there right now.
And you're going to have to take down probably 4 or 5 feet of that slope where the house is in order to get your entrance. So I can't imagine that you leave a ridge sitting there, sort of standing up in the air on its own.
Well, that was the intent of one of the major intents of putting the wall, to leave that slope undisturbed, because we knew that was a concern of the commission.
I'm just one person.
I think I would agree with Commissioner Varnum here that the house is a pretty important part of this area here. Part of my background is was a historian before I was on the commission, is that I think that you have to kind of have a good balance between building new properties and preserving older ones. Like if you look throughout Lowell itself, that the mills that were kept here, they look stunning, and the ones that have been redone look amazing. And you can see pictures of older mills, but they're not there anymore, and it's a vacant part of the downtown, or the parts that they were in are now gone. So I think destroying the oldest house in the city of Lowell would be kind of, you could take pictures of it and say, oh, this is where the oldest house once was, but it's no longer here anymore. So it's no longer the oldest house in Lowell because it doesn't exist anymore. And I think that there has to be some sort of medium where you can find a better place for this house, or find a better way to organize this plan so the house doesn't get taken down. And I think I'd be hard-pressed to vote in favor of this plan while with the house potentially being demolished. I think there can be some better way to protect the house.
Very good.
All right, it's my turn. What's the bank? Do you have, is there a customer there yet?
Lowell 5.
Lowell 5?
Right.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I didn't have to recuse myself before I said the next thing.
Okay.
All right, you're, as we know, in a gateway area, okay? I mean, Wood Street and Westford Street's probably 2 of the heavier traveled access roads from Chelmsford and Route 3, coming from the north through Drum Hill into Lowell, and egress points over the Rock Street Bridge, obviously, over the Rock Bridge, coming out of Pawtucketville. It's the last bridge in the city unless you head up to the Tingsboro Bridge. So it's a major traffic area. I don't know what the traffic pattern is, the numbers, volume, I'm sure it's quite high. And I bet you if you polled the people driving by there on a daily basis, exactly 0 of them would be aware of the fact that the oldest home in the city of Lowell sits right there. There's unfortunately nothing remarkable about the architecture of the home in and of itself. However, do we know, I'm assuming it's post and beam, or is it panel construction? Do you know?
I don't know.
And the reason I ask is because some of those old, and from what I understand, this home was built in the 1600s, so it's way older than 200. It's in its 3rd century. The only reason I say that is because my father also lives in a home built in the 1600s, and some of the early settlers did not build post and beam. They built what they called stress panels, and the trees that they were able to use were so big that they were able to do this, and it's the method of architecture is the boards were so wide that literally what they're 4, 5, 6 foot wide boards that are 2-3 inches thick, and that was not only the interior sheeting, but it was also the structural thing, and oftentimes it was only 4-bys, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches corner posts, where normally you would find like a 12-inch corner post, and then it would run into, purlins and joists and whatnot that would also be substantial, that would provide structure to the building. But some of those very early dwellings weren't built like that. I would be curious to know what the method of architecture on that building was. Notwithstanding that, and the reason I asked you who the proposed customer is going to be on the corner lot, the bank lot, is the Jeanne d'Arc, when they built their corporate offices, incorporated the existing burnt-out walls of the mill building and designed their corporate offices around the existing mill structure. The work was elegant, the finished product was beautiful, and people still comment on it today, and they're very proud of that building. What I'm leaning towards, and again, it's just me, is I agree with Commissioner Lovely that we have two competing resources here. And the historical resource, while it's the oldest home in the city of Lowell, I think our battles should be picked. And the city has other historical battles coming up. And I suppose what I would like to see, I like the idea of some photographic representation, but what I would perhaps instead like to see would be some architectural recognition and perhaps even incorporation of some of the original structure into the bank building. And so people driving by, the facade of the building itself could pay homage somehow to the fact that that these two buildings now sit on the site of the original and oldest structure in the city. And perhaps some, architectural pieces of the structure could be utilized in the construction of, and again, it would be cosmetic purely. It certainly wouldn't be structural.
See, that's good advertising. This was the first mortgage.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not a marketing person, but that's the way I would lean, because the house in and of itself is non-remarkable. We look at other old homes in the city, and and there's salt boxes and there's architectural design, and the roundhouse. I mean, there's remarkable architectural things that are worth preserving. And I'm not saying that this isn't worth preserving, because it's the first. And I'm always reluctant just to be dismissive of the first. But I look at it and say, it's in disrepair, and if we move it to a new site, the proposed site or some other site, at what cost, and who is going to be responsible thereafter? Is it going to be a dwelling lived in? Is it going to be, a habitable dwelling? Is it going to be kept up? Once we get into a situation where we've moved these structures, they require significant maintenance. We all perhaps are homeowners. We all, the things are breaking down and require maintenance on a constant basis. And to put it, in the conceptual location, I'm kind of thinking, well, then what happens to it? Is someone going to want to live there and keep the property up? It's, perpetually in the shade over there. I can't imagine that area gets too much sun at any time of the year. But given all of that, I would think there should be some architectural aspects of this dwelling that could be saved, preserved, and incorporated into the design of the two new buildings. I mean, make them gateway signature pieces. Let's avoid the cookie cutter mold and make something when people approach the city from this and say, wow, it's kind of nice.
Well, I think we've
You
got
know?
a good feel for how the commission feels, and environmentally, we all agree that this may not be the best solution, but some kind of preservation, either video or structural preservation, obviously makes some kind of sense, and we haven't given up looking for other opportunities yet. We just, you know, we just wanted to run this by you, but.
I mean, all that being said,
Yeah,
it's got nothing to do with the Conservation Commission. Even though we're the Conservation Commission, we're not the Historical Preservation Commission.
obviously, you would have a concern about the work in the floodplain.
I think there's and I agree with Commissioner Varnum that this whole area is, you know, but for and I think the Route 3 widening project had a lot to do with the exacerbation of additional flooding in this backwater to the Black Brook, but, you know, and it would involve a lot of tree cutting to place it there. I have a letter from Attorney Brenda Maley also, and I guess you met with the
Correct,
condominium
right.
trustees and with her within the last week or so, and she is requesting that we read the letter. I think everyone has a copy of the letter, and I'll submit it for the record. I'm not going to read it, but there's a strong opposition to moving the dwelling onto the, as she said, the proposed site.
Right.
And again, I mean, it's up to us. She also talks about traffic issues, but those aren't our concerns, so. Those are my thoughts. You know, and again, it's something that would be coordinated with the city.
We appreciate it.
I wouldn't be opposed necessarily to putting it there. You know, as I said, that embankment is not a natural, you know, resource area, and it's certainly not something that can be easily worked. And what I mean by that is it can be easily worked. And you know me, Mr. Erickson, I'm not an easy person to make adjustments to wetland resource areas, but I'm not, you know, and again, this area back there fluctuates because of the soft sandy soils. I would imagine it changes, you know, from year to year to year. And making adjustments to it and revegetating it, to me, doesn't seem like, you know, a terrible disturbance to this area, especially if we could perhaps even get some additional compensation in there to help alleviate some of the flooding that's going on. But I would imagine moving it to the proposed or the conceptual site, as you were saying, would involve quite a bit of tree cutting too.
Would.
Yeah, and that's. I'm not too, some fairly mature trees in there too. That's not something that, I don't know how we'd get it across the river to Luis's properties, but, yeah, I mean, my preferences would be to preserve the building as best that we could, but barring that, you know, there's some great economic issues involving, and I get it. I mean, you've got a chimney that either has to be rebuilt or moved in, who knows what condition it's in. It's you know, what is it, a fieldstone foundation now, or is it a crawl space foundation?
It's Fieldstone
Yeah.
Foundation.
So, I mean, obviously, that you're not gonna move that, so,
Wow.
yeah, and so and the value of a lot of those things is the foundation it sits on, too. You know, to maintain that, you know, you put it on a poured concrete foundation, and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, anyone interested in a historical building is no longer gonna be interested in it, because it's no longer sitting on its original site.
I have to admit, I've driven by it hundreds of times, and I never realized it was one of the oldest buildings.
Well, I was aware of it from a prior project, but prior to that, you know, and again, that goes back a number of years, but prior to that, you know, but I'm just, yeah, I'm just that's due to my own ignorance, though. That's got nothing to do with, and a lot of people did know that that was the oldest structure in the city. And I think Commissioner Varnum informed me of that on a prior project, because she was fully aware that that building had some significant history with the city, so.
We'll continue to look at all possibilities. And, you know, we'll consider the videotaping and photo inventory of the site. And we also have to look at the structural parts of it and see if it can be moved. So I think we've got the gist of the commission's opinion on it, and we'll move forward on it and see what we can do.
All right, and I mean, where are we today? I mean, we have some revised plans.
Where we are is what we'd like is the commission to issue an order of conditions to allow that pretty small amount of work that is within the buffer zone to proceed. We're still with the planning board, we're still working through the other departments, but you've seen the plan, you've seen our calculations from stormwater. We meet the greater than 80% total suspended solid removals, the stormwater management regulations in every respect. We exceed the infiltration that would normally be expected because we're infiltrating everything. We're not increasing flooding off site by any means. In fact, we're probably decreasing it because there'll be less runoff going into the floodplain. It'll be going into groundwater instead. At the request of the commission, we actually extended the erosion controls around the entire site. We put silt sacks going in the ponds from the catch basins to prevent any runoff going off site. Our narrative includes putting a construction entry on both sides for the stormwater management. We've got landscaping plans for it that aren't included here. So, you know, we would like the commission to issue an order of conditions. There's really not much work that's being done within the buffer zone here.
When do you propose to start work?
Well, as soon as we get the approvals from, we have to go to the zoning board for a drive-through for the bank and also planning board for site plan review.
So you're looking before the end of the year or in the spring, or?
Well, depending on the weather. If in the beginning of the year and the weather's horrible, we'll probably wait till the weather breaks. But we would like to get in there as soon as we can. The bank has a lease that's running out with the Muellers. The supermarket's going to expand over there, so they have a time frame as far as when they have to move out.
I suppose we still need to iron out what's going to happen to the dwelling, though, because, and this issue is actually accidentally cropped up in another project before us tonight, and it's something that I was unaware of. And as I was reviewing 310 CMR, I came across if this project is approved, and as a result of the approval, and you decide to move the home to this location, have to provide compensation on that embankment, you wouldn't be able to do it. You'd have to wait for 3 years because it's work proposed within 50 feet of the wetland. It's
I'm sorry, that's not clear.
310 CMR 10.02 subsection 3 has a 3-year waiting period after the issuance of an order of conditions or a certificate of compliance, if you're proposing to do new work within the 50-foot buffer zone. That does not include, and the only exemption to that is that if it has to do with water retention
I believe
area.
the section that you're referring to is actually for a abbreviated notice of intent.
It's for a full notice of intent. It's for a resource area delineation. It includes any order. It's a jurisdictional issue. It's not. It's in the preamble to the act.
Attorney, I'll take your word for it. I will check that section out.
Yeah. So I was unaware of it because I was looking it up on another particular project, but and it's only the 50 feet. There's exemptions. But when you're within the 50-foot setback, there's 3 specific exemptions, and if it's for floodplain compensation, that's not within one of the three specific exemptions, so.
Couldn't that be considered an amendment?
Yeah,
if
I mean,
that
it could be done on an amended, it could be done on an amended NOI, but if all the work was done and a COC had issued, or if it was a resource area delineation, then there's a 3-year moratorium, so.
All the feedback we've gotten so far tells us that this really isn't a viable option. We're gonna spend more energy trying to find some other way to,
Yeah, but I guess what I'm curious about is what happens to it in the meantime, though? I mean, does it stay on site until you find something to do? I mean,
when we start construction, we'll have arrived at a solution or of one way or another. We're either gonna take it down, move it, sell it, or whatever. But, you know, in the meantime, we're not gonna start construction within the next 3 or 4 weeks. We still got some time to work out some kind of alternative. If we can find something that's amenable to everybody, then that's what we'll do. At the very least, we will go to the idea of putting together a video and photo.
And also, what you had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that taking part of the structure and incorporate it with the bank. I can't speak for the bank, but if the bank doesn't want to do it, we can do it with our building. We can incorporate that house with one of the two buildings, or both.
We've got an architect working on the site, so, you know, we can approach the architect and
you know,
give us some genius ideas.
and again, and it may not be the facade of the building. It could be some, internal structural members and
correct.
part of the lobby or something like that,
Correct.
or a display in the lobby, or,
Right.
some, some sort of,
We still got to go down inside and see how it was built. I want to do that myself anyhow.
I mean, to me, and I'm anathema to, to just ignoring the historical preservation, because I think we're losing piecemeal a lot of our culture, and our country isn't all that old, but progress has to be done responsibly too. And this city is built on history, and I mean, there's a huge battle now over the Pawtucket Dam between FERC and the National Park Service, so, who knows where that's gonna go. I would imagine that's gonna be tied up in court for quite a lengthy time before they iron that one out, but any time it can be done, and Mr. Kazanjian, you've done many projects in front of us. You usually do very, very good work, so, I would imagine that, if you can do it, I certainly would appreciate it, and I think, it would be kind of a cool thing, to see. But again, it's obviously not a part of this filing. Are there any further questions from the commission?
Just listening to the discussion here, it almost seems like this is several weeks at least premature to vote on this, since, in a fairly quick manner, you're going to decide the fate of the house, from what you've said.
Well, it really hasn't been a quick manner. We've been, going back and forth with this for a few months now.
Mm-hmm. But, if that's true, that the law prohibits us from changing the plan after we vote on it, seems like it might be a good idea to just wait until the planning board and whatever other boards you have to go through would look over everything.
No, it's not that, we could do an amendment to the, if an NOI had issued, it can be amended. That's not, there's no moratorium on that. It's if there's a request for a resource area delineation, and then, there's a delineated area, and then the applicant files for an RDA or an NOI to do work inside the 50-foot zone. And again, it's just the 50-foot zone. That does not involve the certain defined exemptions.
We've already delineated that.
Yeah, well, but it could come back, from my reading of it, it could come back as an amendment to the NOI. So as part of the original project, okay. Not as, but if, you know, again, once it's closed out, once the work is completed, and the only thing we're doing is waiting for a COC, then you're gonna have the problem. That's where
It
the,
would be our preference that the commission issue an order of conditions. Obviously, we're coming into the winter season, and any work that we're doing on the site, we'd like to, you know, if the weather's good, we'd like to be able to get started on that. So we would appreciate, you know, culmination of the hearing process and issuance of an order of conditions. We still have a 10-day or 2-week appeal period. So, and winter is obviously coming after today.
How long is this, how long a project is this? Is this something you'd accomplish within a year, 2 years, what,
Oh, 1 year,
1 year?
1 year. And talking to the folks at TPD, I guess we have to go to Conservation first, and before we go to the Planning Board, and then ZBA. So I think before we get the finalization from the Planning Board, we need an order condition from you folks.
So can I just summarize this? You're coming for the order of conditions for the new driveway, and the only thing that's budding in the 50-foot buffer zone is the house, if it has to be removed? Because it seems like all your stuff is out of the buffer zone.
You can assume that the house is gonna be removed, one way or another.
Okay,
Okay, so that's gonna be gone. So we're filing for the construction of the wall, the utilities, a portion of the building, the stormwater management system,
Yep.
the drainage in that area.
and all that's on, outside the buffer zone, besides the riprap that's going down?
Yes.
Okay. And then if someone does remove the house, are we gonna have them come in for a separate permit?
Again, if we decide to keep the house and put it on that lot, we will do as Mr. Zacher suggested and amend the order of conditions.
Come back for amendment, okay.
We would, of course, have to come back before you for that because we've got a lot of design work to do if we take that route. We've only got conceptual plans right now. So that is, just assume that the
Like, not
building
even
is
there.
just not gonna be there.
Okay, so this was just showing us an example.
Right.
Okay. Can I make a motion? Or is it
not
motion?
yet, I want to open it up to.
Okay.
Is there anyone here who would like to offer their, well, actually, no further questions? All right, is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns, either for or against this project? Is there anyone who would like to offer their comments or concerns, either for or against? Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns, either for or against? All right, since it was requested, I have an email from Brenda P. Maley Esquire dated Wednesday, November 13th, 2013. The subject of the email is, Dear Ms. Joseph, I'm referring to Swathi, I'm unable to attend the Conservation Commission hearing tonight related to the Kazanjian Enterprises, Inc. project located at Wood Street, Lowell. Kindly provide a copy of this email to the Chair of the Conservation Commission and request that it be considered by the Commission and read into the record in lieu of my appearance. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me. Thank you. Subject of the email, Dear members of the Conservation Commission, I reside at the Brookside House Condominium, 630 Princeton Boulevard, Unit 5, Lowell. I am also the president of the Board of Trustees of the Brookside House Condominium Association. Brookside House condominiums abut the subject project site on Wood Street. Previously, I appeared before the Conservation Commission to present my concerns regarding the impact or potential impact this project may have on Brookside House condominiums, specifically, and the neighborhood in general, related to the wetlands adjacent to both properties and previous flooding of Black Brook. I, along with Nancy Judge, met with Mr. Kazanjian, Mr. Gray, and Mr. Erickson last evening, and we reviewed and discussed the amended plans for this project. It was represented that the developers are considering relocating the dwelling presently on the site to an area close to the property line with Brookside House condominiums. The relocation of this dwelling will require significant tree removal and clearing of land, greatly thinning the forested area to the rear of our property. In addition, other changes were shown on the revised plan which may or may not be within the purview of the Conservation Commission, including the relocation of the ingress-egress on Wood Street and the creation of a left-hand turning lane in the middle of Wood Street to allow for a left-hand turn onto the property. This email is intended to inform you that I oppose the relocation of the dwelling on the site to the relocation shown on the revised plan or to any other location on the site. I am ambivalent regarding whether the dwelling remains in its present location or is taken down. If given a choice between relocating the dwelling to the location on the revised plans or removing the dwelling from the site altogether, I would favor removing the dwelling from the site altogether. I'll skip the next paragraph simply because she's talking about traffic on Wood Street, and that's not within the jurisdictional concerns of the Conservation Commission. And then lastly, I am forwarding this communication because I'm unable to attend and be present at the hearing scheduled for November 13th, 2013, and we request that you read the communication into the record. Thank you. Brenda P. Maley, Esquire, 9 Middlesex Street, Lowell, Mass. And she gives her information. All right, so that was read into the record. Now, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Bearden and seconded by Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. All right.
Can I also make a motion to issue, I guess, a standard City of Lowell order of conditions? And we don't mention the amendment now, right? They'll come after, if need be?
I didn't understand the last part.
I don't have to say anything about the amendment now, right? That'll come after. So I'll make a motion to issue a City of Lowell standard order of conditions.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Bearden, seconded by Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion?
Yeah, I feel that, I know that the amendment process can be added on later, but I feel that this is kind of moving on too hastily, especially with a building of this size. When, with the building being this old, I think it's just far too fast to move on to something like this and approve something, even with the possibility of amendment later, that in potentially a month or two, a building that's been there for hundreds of years could be gone seems far too hasty, and especially if we don't know exactly where this is going to impact on the site, where the house is going to be or not be. I think it'd be too hasty to implement this kind of order conditions.
Any other discussion?
There's a large amount of debris on the back slope that just came to my mind a minute ago that probably needs cleaning up in a careful fashion without a lot of large machinery. Bottles, and it's an old household dump, apparently.
Now's the time to do it.
Yeah, and what's the other thing? Oh, this has nothing to do with conservation, but I just wanted to put it out there that this particular site, I don't know if you've talked with the historic board, probably would yield some interesting things if you had some kind of an archaeological investigation surrounding the house there. You know, metal detectors, and has nothing to do with conservation, but it would be a shame to just go in there and not think about that ahead of time, and perhaps some students at the university or one of them would be interested in doing that.
We have somebody that approached us already about that one, a metal detector.
Well, I had someone with a metal detector on my property too, but he wasn't documenting anything. And I think documenting where things were found and what was found would be important, not to just let someone come in and dig everything up and put it in a barrel and take it away.
Unfortunately, as you noted earlier, much of that site has been disturbed in the past. I don't know how long ago, but part of it was mined out, and the odds of any real archaeological value to it are pretty slim.
Well, I know around my old barn foundations, you have to go down at least 6 or 8 inches in order to get to any surface that was in use 100 years ago. You know, it builds up pretty fast, the soil, so. just an idea that I'd hate to see the opportunity go by without somebody looking into it.
Do we have a reference to the plan that doesn't show the, what revision do we have that shows the new ingress egress area, but without the moving of the historical structure?
We don't, we put that right on the plan, but we can remove it, or the order could just specifically state that, you know, this order in no way allows the removal of or the placement of the existing dwelling.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is if we issue the order, the DEP will issue a superseding denial.
We'll have that erased, and we'll get you a new plan tomorrow or the next day, and with a revised date, you can go on that. I have no problem with that. We just wanted to show it all as one, so everybody was clear on what was going on. But
Yeah,
we can move it quite easily.
Yeah, we can reference that in the order. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Clarification, Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
So, in light of Commissioner Varnum's comment, we're looking for a special condition to attempt to remove debris from that slope area?
is that an amendment?
I'm asking, I guess, was that,
We
I think
should
it's a
make it
good
one.
idea.
I'm not sure it's necessary to think that anybody looking at it would want to remove it. I don't know. But I think perhaps it would be an amendment because some of it is covered over the years, covered with new soil, and perhaps would have to be a little bit dug into in order to get,
You've got to have a small machine down there to put on the riprap anyhow, so if you put an order into, a condition into the order that says reasonable attempts will be made to remove the metals and debris that are on the site, we will gladly comply with that. It doesn't do us any good having it there. We want it to look good, we want it to look decent, so put it as a condition, and we will comply with it.
okay, as long as the slope isn't compromised by the removal.
Right, we wouldn't expect extraordinary efforts, but there's like kitchen stoves down there and things that shouldn't be on the site anyhow.
Do I have a motion?
So I would move to add that as a condition,
All right,
that the debris on the slope behind the house would be removed in conjunction with the installation of the riprap and drainage outfall pipe.
I would, that's a motion?
Change?
I'll
By
second.
Commissioner Varnum,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Beardron. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay. And I can't make the motion, but I would also like to, and again, well, okay, actually, I'm withdraw that thought. All in favor of Commissioner Varnum's amendment to the original motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. All in favor of the original motion as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
One opposed, the rest aye. If you could please keep us apprised of your efforts. Absolutely. And the direction that you're going with respect to the dwelling. And Mr. Kazanjian, I trust that you're going to make every effort to do that. I know you're a longtime Lowellian, so.
Absolutely. I want to thank the commission very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Excuse me. I just wanted to confirm that you will be providing the revised plan as recommended by the commission, and then only the order will be issued, because,
Revised plan?
yeah,
Yes.
that does not show the house on the floodplain,
Yes,
Correct.
we'll get that to you within a day.
because we need to make sure that that is the plan that gets mentioned on the order.
Okay.
So the
Yeah,
sooner you can give
Yeah,
that
because
to
what will
us.
happen is the DEP will take a look at this, and they'll issue a superseding denial.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me a bit, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you again.
all right. Moving on, second item on the agenda is request for certificate of compliance, Lowell General Hospital concerning DEP file number 2060660, project location 295 Varnum Avenue. From what I understand, they've requested a continuance. Okay, yeah, I believe we had some communication from Mr. Foley in our pack just recently, and to try and set up a site visit because the areas of concern are inaccessible to just go out and visit. They're
Yes.
behind
So what I'm going
gates
to
and-
do is I'm going to send an email, try to see,
Okay.
a time that is most convenient to most of you and inform them. And they said, unlike when I went on site, they were not prepared to give a tour at that level. And since the commission has informed the applicant that the interest is primarily about the work that was done in the buffer zone,
Right.
it is pertinent that we actually see what is there.
Right. I've had some communications also with Mr. Foley outside of the hearing, and the general gist of it was that from the meeting, that we're more interested in an as-built only as it applies to jurisdictional areas, because this was a very extensive project, and
Sure.
in the scope of it, very little of it had to do with wetland resources. It was mainly due to the expansion of the hospital, which was entirely outside of our jurisdictional areas. So what he did was he tried to limit the as-built for our purposes just to the jurisdictional areas, so.
Yes, and I have included his response, explaining why the as-built does not have information about the landscape and the stormwater features, because they are all pretty much outside the buffer. So I believe that all the more reason a site visit, which shows that as the reality on the site, is something that will help the commission accept that as-built plan as an official as-built plan. Since the boundary of the, work of limit is different in the order, if the commission is approving, one area and issuing a complete COC, it's in the best, interest to have that site visit.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, and I know I'm,
Do we take a vote to continue to next meeting?
oh, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you. Do I have a motion to continue
I'll make a motion to continue
by
to
Commissioner Lynch, seconded by Commissioner Varnum? And this is to the
November
meeting just
17th.
before Thanksgiving? Was that the 27th?
27th,
Okay.
yes.
Of November. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Moving on to the next, thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, request for determination of applicability, and sure, I'm going to mispronounce your name horribly. Doi Nguyen? Did I even come remotely close?
Close enough.
Okay, well, I apologize. And project location is 124 Dingwell Street, and it's expand the existing deck within the wetland buffer bordering vegetated wetlands. I met with Mr. Nguyen just before the meeting, and the reason being, if you look at the plan that was submitted with the RDA, there's a corner of the deck that is within the 50-foot, and the reason I'm bringing this up right at the beginning is because this is a jurisdictional issue for us. The Wetlands Protection Act, which is Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, is also regulated by the Code of Massachusetts Regulations, which is 310 CMR. And under 310 CMR, subsection 10.02 deals with subject matter jurisdiction of the various conservation local boards. And unfortunately, this project was, the original home and deck that stand there now were built pursuant to an order of conditions that had issued in 2009. And this commission on April 29th of 2011 issued a certificate of compliance. And the reason I bring that up is because under 310 CMR 10.02, and I was unaware of this actually until this afternoon, subsection 3, activities within the buffer zone which do not meet the requirements of 310 CMR 10.02 subsection 2B1, and that deals with retention areas that are within the 50-foot setback area. And 2, are subject to pre-construction review through filing of a determination of applicability. Let me just back up. Where am I? Well, anyway, 10.02 puts a 3-year moratorium on a filing for an RDA or an NOI when the proposed work is within 50 feet of the bordering vegetated wetland or wetland bank, river, stream, perennial stream, which this is. Okay, the proposed work is within the 50-foot no-build zone as identified on your as-built plan. Because of that, the 3 years isn't up until April 30th of 2014. Now, you have 2 options. One is you can wait until then and come back before us. The other option is to take that corner of the proposed deck and cut it a little bit short, so you're outside of the 50-foot no-build zone. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a question on that, because I'm looking at the plan, and we're talking maybe a couple of feet off the corner, correct?
Yeah,
Let me, just the question I had is, in terms of whether it encroaches within the no-build zone, is that limited to footings, or would that include the overhang of a deck? In other words, if it's the footing and the footing's outside the 50-foot area, would that be compliant? In other words, if it's just the overhang.
it's not clear. 10.02 subsection 1E says the conversion of lawn to uses accessory to residential structures such as decks, sheds, patios, and pools, provided the activity is located more than 50 feet from the mean annual high water line. So it says the activity. I would interpret that to mean any part of, so whether it's an overhang or not would be, to me, largely irrelevant.
That was basically my only question when I saw that, was whether or not the footing or the overhang for the deck would be included. My only question would be on whether the silt fence around the deck that needs to be included, if that was going to be an issue if I decide to cut the deck a little bit shorter.
Yeah, it's interesting because they talked to siltation barrier too, and I did read that, and right now I can't put my finger on it, and I may not have made erosion and soil sedimentation controls are installed as maintained at the limit of work or at least 50 feet from the resource area, whichever is further away. So it's the same 3-year moratorium applies also to siltation barrier. That's not already previously installed under another order, okay? So again, this whole section I'm reading is the 3-year moratorium section within the 50-foot setback area. The Wetlands Protection Act has several buffer zones. The most critical one is the first 50 feet. That's the one that's very special under the Wetlands Protection Act. So because we're dealing with that first zone, that first 50-foot zone, there's special rules that apply that don't apply to other buffer zone work, okay? If this had been permitted 10 years ago and was released and you were just coming back new for the first time on some, and we were way beyond the 3-year period, okay, then it's something that could be considered. But what I'm saying is that this is a jurisdictional issue. We can't even consider it unless you change your plan or you wait, and, you know, as you said, another 6 months or so.
So if I do decide, I'm pretty much deciding that it's probably going to be the easiest thing to do is to cut the deck short. But if I do that, if I put in an application tomorrow with the newly revised plan.
Well, I would say we could probably consider it based on this with the proviso that you submit a revised plan to cut the deck short.
Okay, that's my only question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the rest of the commission feels, but if that's the direction you want to go, again, I mean, we had a brief conversation before the meeting, you and I.
Yes.
And what I kind of outlined was, you know, you either have to wait because what's been submitted we can't consider, or if you wanted to change the project, then we could consider it. So that's, I mean, if that's something that you consider, from what I understand, you already have some footings in.
I had started the plan not knowing any of this stuff. So I found out after the fact, and the footings were for the staircase on the far end. I had put all the way up to the staircase, and then I've since taken it down. But other than that, it's all just half a deck I have over there right now.
Just something else to point out too, Mr. Chair, for the applicant. You know, we're talking about a request for determination of applicability. In my sense, I can't speak for the whole commission, but looking at the scope of work myself, I mean, I'm inclined to think that if we were to have that revised figure, you know, this project would probably be, it would probably be appropriate to issue a -3 determination for a minimal impact, meaning you wouldn't have to go through the notice of intent. So I think a clean way of handling this would be to just, as the chair suggested, maybe kind of submitting a revised plan. Then we would vote on the revised plan for the request for determination of applicability, looking at the scope of the work. I, for one, would be willing to consider this to be a minimal impact, and therefore we could issue a -3 determination, and therefore you would end it there and not need to go forward with a full notice of intent with the whole certificate of compliance and that stuff.
You wouldn't even have to go that far, because the provision that I read actually defines this as a minor activity. It's conversion of lawn area into a deck is a recognized minor area. The only problem is it's got to be outside the 50-foot area. Once you put it inside the 50-foot area, then not only is it no longer minor under the act, but you can't even file for 3 years after the last activity. Okay?
So I'm just gonna try to see if I can file the application with the new one plan as soon as we can, and then.
So is it your intent then to shorten the deck, to bring it outside of the 50-foot area?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's probably be the preferable.
All right, well, we have, if that's the intent, okay, what we can do is, again, this is a minor activity, okay? It doesn't, from my reading, it's under the definition would be a -3. So we can -3 it, but with the condition that you provide a revised plan showing the deck outside of the 50-foot.
I can certainly do that.
No disturb zone.
Yeah, I'll call the engineer tomorrow, and then I'll have him revise the plan. As soon as he gets it, I'll send it right over.
Also, is there siltation fence up there now?
There is not.
Okay, what is the purpose of the silt? I mean, what's the purpose of it?
From what I understood, the siltation fence was to keep anything from going into the wetlands as far as the debris.
Okay, but there's not much of it's fairly flat out there.
Well, the area that I'm working on is a little bit sloped. There is some a slope part on the deck, so
But
it's not completely.
it's all lawn though, too, correct?
It's all lawn, correct.
Yeah, and the only,
Aside from the rock, the pebbles, where the patio would be, in front of the decking, in front of the, well, I guess it would be under the deck and in front of the door.
underneath the deck,
Correct.
yeah. How much disturbance, are you digging that up? I mean, what are you doing there?
Not any more than I have to do the footings. That's pretty much, the less work, the better for me.
All right, what I would suggest then is that the siltation be brought in as close as possible to the immediate footings that are to the south, okay?
Just enough room to work with in the fencing.
Yeah, you want to get the siltation, again, there's a prohibition of putting siltation barrier inside the 50-foot area too, okay?
Would I need a separate?
This is a really, we're kind of in really specialized territory here, and, if this was an original project, it would be one thing, but it's not. These jurisdictional things are part of the preamble of the Wetlands Protection Act, and the purpose of what we're talking about tonight and why there's a 3-year prohibition is that the legislature recognized and through science and through whatnot, that they don't want piecemeal projects. They don't want a project to be built out and then a year later you're adding a little bit more, and then a year later you're adding a little bit more.
I understand.
Yeah, you
That's,
see what I'm saying? I mean, they don't
yes,
want
that's
that.
completely
Okay? They want it all done in
understandable.
one shot because they want to minimize the impacts to the resource area. And every time
That
there's
makes
a
sense.
disturbance, there's an impact. Okay?
I understand. I guess my last question would be to see if I need a separate application to do something with the silt fence.
No, that would be part of it. What I'd like to see you do is pull the siltation fence up as close to the footing of the deck, perhaps even putting it on the 50-foot no-build line, and no closer to the wetland than that, okay? And then pulling the deck, that corner of the deck outside of the 50-foot. When would you be able to provide the office with those revised plans?
I'm going to call the engineer tomorrow morning, first thing. He's getting ready to retire soon, so he's working a little bit slower than anyone would like. So as soon as I can get that,
All right.
I will.
What I would suggest
Send it
then
in.
is we could perhaps entertain a motion for a -3 with no work to commence until such time that the applicant has submitted revised plans with the changes to the siltation barrier and the deck as discussed tonight, and until such time that those plans can be brought before the commission at the thereafter next regularly scheduled meeting for approval, or for review, I should say. Okay? Okay?
Okay.
Do I have a motion? All right, seconded by Commissioner Lovely. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. All right,
All set?
just keep in touch with Swati and,
I will see if I can get it in again as soon as I can.
right.
Thank you for your time. Have a good
thank you
night.
for coming in.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is request for determination of applicability, City of Lowell. Project location is the Lawrence Street Bridge over the Concord River, and it's to conduct material sampling on the bridge over the Concord River located on the Lawrence Street jurisdictional areas of bank bordering vegetated wetlands and riverfront area.
Good evening. I'm Lisa DeMayo, the city engineer here in Lowell, and we've been working with TEC. We have a project to develop a repair plan for 5 different bridges throughout the city. And our priority bridge that we're concentrating mainly on is the Lawrence Street Bridge over the Concord River. And working with Mass DOT, we found that there's some more information we need to discover, go through discovery. The plans for these bridges are not complete. They're missing over the years, and some of the information on those previous plans we can't find, so you have to go out to the bridge and gather the data. And Jody from TEC is going to tell you what it is we need to do and what we're asking for from you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Want to see if that works?
Yeah, Swati, is it possible? I think we lost our slides. Can we check with Linda? I showed up an hour early to set this up, and it's still not able to figure it out, so I apologize. While they're getting that ready, I'll introduce myself. I am Jody Trumpio, principal with TEC. I've been working with the city for several years now, and have the pleasure to represent them on this project as well. As Lisa mentioned, we are looking into doing various levels of work on 5 municipally owned structures, one of which is Lawrence Street over the Concord River. Thank you, Swan. And as Lisa mentioned, we're at a crossroads right now in terms of the level of detail or defining the scope of work. We've done some hydraulic study to determine that there is some scour countermeasures that we need to do and get into the waterway to treat some of the substructure units. But what we do in terms of rehabilitating the superstructure, the roadway and the beams supporting the bridge deck, we're trying to determine whether or not we can actually reuse the existing concrete beams. They're in pretty good shape, and we're looking to see if they have the adequate strength to be able to preserve them as well. So in doing so, without the availability of plans, we are requesting to do some material sampling, and we're going to actually go out there, take small samples of the reinforcing steel that is in the concrete beams, and going to take those to a lab and test them to determine what the strength of that steel is. So I do have a couple of visuals just to kind of explain what it is exactly that we're looking to do at this particular bridge. This key plan obviously represents the bridge structure. I have a couple, the work area is pointed out in that red shaded area. We're looking to, if you look at the bridge, Lawrence Street running east-west, right to left on the screen, and the river north-south on the screen. So the bridge is 6 spans. As I mentioned, it's a reinforced concrete bridge. The beams are reinforced concrete. So we are looking to go into the southernmost span at the south abutment there, right where you see that arrow, that yellow arrow, and to go down the slope there to access the first 3 beams from that span, and to set up a contained work zone. Obviously identifying those blue lines represent the wetland delineation that our wetland scientists had delineated, and the yellow line, dash line, represents the riverfront area there. So obviously we're obviously doing work adjacent to the river, and we want to make sure that this minor activity that we are doing is done properly and protecting the resource area. I do want to note that all of this work for the bridge and the other 4 bridges that we will be doing, we do have plans to file notices of intent for each of those bridges. This is just the minor activity that's needed to further develop the scope of work for this particular bridge. So having said that, I'll just advance the slide here. So again, just a photo represent how the workers, and just to give an idea of the type of activity, this is something that can be done in a couple of hours, truthfully. They would access that first span. You can see the concrete abutment adjacent to the vegetated slope there. They would walk down the slope and set up a temporary staging platform that would be affixed to the concrete abutment, and they'd be able to work from there to access the concrete beams from the bridge. So here's a photo representing the proposed work area. That arrow is showing the south abutment, where we would plan to install a temporary stage so that they can stand up on, work from that platform, and you can see the concrete beams above, which are in pretty good shape. Obviously, the river is right there, and there's plans to do a containment zone to be able to put an impermeable tarp to drape it from the underside of the bridge and to affix it to the base of the abutment. And you can see in that graphic there, that's the temporary work platform. It's a steel bracket that would get anchored into the concrete abutment wall. They put a couple of 2x8s for a working platform on top of that, and then they'd be able to extract the steel samples I know it's difficult to see, but that's an elevation view of the bridge, and I'm highlighting at the top of the page there a small section of the steel reinforcement that they would be extracting from the beam. Just a photo sample just to recognize or to show a similar type of enclosure activity that was done. This particular bridge was probably getting sandblasted and a new paint job. But again, this type of enclosure would be installed for this temporary work. And this photo here is a cross-section of one of the concrete beams, and it's, if you will, it's an X-ray, if you will, of what's inside the concrete beam, and it's all the steel reinforcing. And what we're doing is, you can see the 7 black squares at the base of the concrete beam. That represents some of the reinforcing that's in the bottom of that beam, and we're looking to come in and extract a small piece of one of those bars out of 3 individual beams along the south abutment. And that is the scope of the work. We take it to a lab, we get it tested, and that will determine, we'll be able to further determine whether or not the beams are suitable for reuse or if they're going to need to be replaced. The goal is to upgrade the bridge to satisfy today's highway loads, and this is our initial step of something that we will need to do to confirm that. That is the extent of the project for this RDA application. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
I don't have any questions. It's fairly comprehensive. Commissioner Gordon, Commissioner Lovely, Commissioner Varnum, Commissioner Lynch, Commissioner Beardron. Do I have a, to me, it seems like we could fairly easily -3 this, so.
I'll make a motion to issue a -3
Second.
determination.
By Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner Gordon. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we will be before you in the near future to present the proposed work at each of these bridges. So notice of intent filings will be coming your way soon enough. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night. Moving on to other business. 47 Stockbridge Avenue, concerning DB file number 2060720, approval of the revised site plan submitted as per special condition, the order of conditions. From what I understand, the DEP has withdrawn their superseding denial and all of this, okay. I looked at it, I looked at the cuts and the fills and the delineation of the cuts and the fills, and I'm okay with it. I don't know if there's any issues. This is just for acceptance because we've already approved it, so I don't know if there's anything. We should probably take a vote on this, so because of the history of this file.
I'll offer a motion to accept the plan.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Lynch, motion by Commissioner Lovely. Any further discussion? Do you have anything to add? No, you're just here for...
Just want to get home.
You just, all right. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Good luck. And we have minutes. Minutes and minutes and minutes, and I know they were in the package, so do we have... We have the August 28th, 2013, September 11th, 2013, September 25th, 2013, and October 9th, 2013 minutes for approval.
They looked good to me.
Is that a motion, Commissioner?
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes
All
as
right.
written.
All four.
All four.
Do I have a second?
Second?
By Commissioner Gordon. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and that's for all four of them, so, okay.
We have one item for other business.
Yep.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had to actually do a site visit at 50 Stedman Street. This is one of the Indian temples along, okay, I'm sorry, I am blanking out on the name of the stream. So back in 2010, we have a COC issued for some gravel parking in the wetland buffer. And I believe they had submitted another notice of intent following that to actually pave that gravel parking, but which that filing was withdrawn without prejudice, because once they understood the scope of that happening was not in their favor. What has happened was the gravel was not secured. The edge of the barrel was not secured. And the plan that was approved shows like a limit of line with the gravel, but after reviewing the historic photographs, what is shown is the gravel actually extended beyond what was the plan. But that COC has been closed based on the plan that they had submitted. So what has happened is every time they did vegetation management, every time they used the temporary parking area, it got moved, like it's like dislocated. And we also have concerns to ensure that additional gravel was not placed as a matter of them trying to level it. Now all this is outside the floodplain, but it is within the wetland buffer. So two things are happening. One, they also didn't place the gravel in a certain area that was approved as part of the order, but they went on to build a concrete pad for the dumpster, for the location of the dumpster to meet the city's dumpster ordinance. They should have filed for an RDA, so they, and I have packets for that. They are doing an RDA filing for the dumpster location. The only thing they were saying, the reason why they placed it there is because they were approved to have a gravel parking there, which they never placed, so they assumed it's okay to have the dumpster placed there. We have issued a violation notice, not an enforcement notice, because we were trying to bring the site under compliance. Silt fence has been placed along the disturbed area. So what happened was they actually removed some vegetation, some wild vegetation, which was not planted as part of the order or anything. It was just natural succession into the uplands. They removed it, which kind of exposed a little bit of a slope where the gravel ends and where the wetland buffer is right now. So we instructed them to immediately install the silt fence. We have instructed them to remove the gravel, and they are they propose they want to hydroseed that area. So they have removed the gravel and they have replaced it with loam, and they're in the process of hydroseeding. And we told them the importance to define the edge of up to where they were allowed to, have that temporary parking. So they're looking at having some evergreen planting happening there, so that, every time there is some kind of landscape maintenance happening, there is no accidental encroachment happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the site tomorrow, and we have been going pretty much like on every other day basis to work with them. Now, what we have asked the property owner to provide is a statement from the contractor explaining what amount of gravel was removed and what amount of loam was, placed. Now, this is something, we are acting on something that was brought to our attention like in the past, last weekend. This all happened last weekend, and we've been working all of this week on that. We have information from the abutting neighbors across from the stream that they have concerns about additional gravel that was placed prior to that. So we are working with the applicant to inform them that we recommend they produce an as-built plan, current as-built plan, which can substantially show that the grade that was approved as per the COC exists or not on the ground. So based on that, the commission has the commission can suggest or recommend whether they should do an RDA filing based on what that as-built plan shows. So this is the situation right now, and the reason why we didn't issue an enforcement order was this was, vegetation management within that area is something which is considered as an exempt, but because it was gravel in that area, we understand that it's a boundary that needs to be secured. So we wanted to stabilize the site immediately. We didn't want to wait till spring where they give us the excuse of, we can't, stabilize the ground right now because it's frozen. It would be, too much of a time to wait. And they have been working proactively with us. We do understand it's a very sensitive area. We are trying to bring the site into compliance. At the same time, we don't want to overlook the jurisdictional authority the Conservation Commission has. So that's why they are coming with the filing for the concrete pad. And I believe since they are here, it will be a good time to, we are going to update you about, if the hydroseeding has happened and to what level the restoration work is being done. So at that point, from the DPD staff side, we are recommending that they produce an as-built plan.
We issued a certificate of compliance on the original project?
Yes.
All right, and along with that filing was an as-built submitted?
Yes. But the interesting thing is, the as-built plan shows one thing, and an aerial photograph from the same time shows gravel extending beyond where they said the gravel would end.
So instead of an as-built, you perhaps want an existing conditions plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the existing condition plans, we are trying to achieve, get that existing condition plans to understand if the grade has been altered from what was recorded as the as-built plan from back when they got the COC.
So the conditions that exist there now appear not to be the same as is shown on the as-built that was approved by the commission?
Yes.
All right. As I recall on that plan, and I think Louisa was probably the only one, you remember this project, yeah, I think they were trying to get parking in towards the south that abutted Mount Pleasant Golf Course.
Yes.
And I think they were encroaching on Mount Pleasant's property, if I recall. So there was some issues with that. Is there any, I think they were trying to claim credits for work that wasn't even on their site, and that was part of the problem to all of this. I'm assuming, I'm trusting that there's no encroachments, or there are, or
not to the other property.
And not necessarily Mount Pleasant, but even towards the east, because did their property bound extend down the entire bank, or does it end at the top of the bank?
I think it does extend to the middle of the stream. So
Okay.
it is. They
All
have
right.
jurisdictional areas on their property.
Okay.
So just to explain, every time we met with the property owner, they refuse to, well, they are, their stand is that they haven't brought any additional gravel onto the site. And the way the site presents, it is a little unbelievable. And I am not saying, that was done this past weekend. This happened over time. We're concerned about neighbors, about activities that have happened at night and weekends, and.
All right, well, let's get an existing conditions plan,
Okay.
and to the extent that the existing conditions are different, and again, this may be something where we call in for a peer review and have a third-party review of the existing conditions for our own verification, and if they differ, then appropriate action needs to be taken to bring the site back to what was originally approved. And they may want to be advised of that, because if the existing conditions show substantial additions,
Okay.
they're risking getting an order with penalties
Okay.
and attendant fines to restore the site at great cost to them. So,
So they're actually working with, the DPD to, basically remove the gravel and,
I appreciate people who work with the DPD. I don't appreciate people who try and get away with stuff, and then when they're caught, then they want to work with the city.
I understand that. The only thing we are trying to decide or understand a better grasp is the as-built plan that was submitted shows something, but an aerial photograph from that time shows the gravel in one area more, and they actually didn't place the gravel in another area that they were approved for. So, I'm trying to understand from video recordings or something if there was any reason that COC plan was accepted, because the site presented a different picture at that time from the aerial photograph. So I'm trying to understand if it was something, if that plan was, or if the COC, so where I have difficulty understanding is why that plan was not asked to be revised to, reflect the site as it existed at that point.
Does the aerial photograph show more gravel than what was approved in the as-built?
Yes.
Then there could be some issues here.
Yes, okay. What they have been explaining is that gravel was always there, and after checking with some of the former DP staff,
If that gravel was always there, then their engineer should know that it should have been
on the
shown
existing
on the
condition
plan.
plans, yes.
And if it's not shown on the as-built plan, then it's not there.
Okay.
And it's not supposed to be there.
Okay, so the reason why they are, I think why they are proactively working with this is they assumed the site as it existed, or, when they got the certificate of compliance, they assumed it's okay to have, it the way it is. Once I informed them, because if DEP or anyone comes for a site visit, and if they find that the plan on file shows another information, you're looking at a direct enforcement action, notice being filed for them. So I explained to them the reason to, limit the buffer of the gravel to where, as per the as-built plan that was, submitted. And they have actually gone one step further, and they're saying we are going to remove all the gravel. So pretty much they're right now saying they're going to end the, parking where right now the paved parking is. And the paved parking was something that already existed even before. The order was exclusively to address that gravel parking strip they were talking about.
Right. And this is, this is all part of that backwater to the Black Brook area that we're dealing with on another site that was here tonight. It's all of these incremental little fillings that are causing problems.
So that is why, we thought instead of having a back and forth where they claim they haven't done it, they just did landscape management.
Well, if their as-built plan that was submitted and approved doesn't sync with what in fact is out there,
The
then
site has to be brought to
they're going to
compliance.
be asked to restore the site.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So we just needed your permission to place that as an item of discussion.
All right.
And hopefully the discussion can provide them some direction towards, we're hoping we can have the as-built plan by the existing condition plans.
Right.
So that you can advise or make recommendations as to do they need an RDA filing, or if
They might need it, to the extent that they've placed gravel on the slope towards the brook, they may need a notice of intent filing to do the work to remove it.
Okay. Yeah, it's not on
I,
this.
again,
yeah.
I don't know the extent
I
of it,
understand.
and it's
I think
just,
they,
you
having
know,
the existing
I
condition
mean, but
plans will help.
that's a real possibility,
Okay,
okay?
okay,
So,
all right. So right now, they are in the process, they have removed the gravel and they have hydro-seeded. So when we asked them to prepare an existing conditions plan, it is going to reflect the fact that, you know, the hydro-seeding has happened. So we are more concerned about the grading. If, you know, if they place the additional gravel, that would have altered the elevation of that area. It's not in the floodplain, but it's close enough that we have concern.
it's all buffer zone, and,
Yes.
and they're relatively close to that stream back there, too.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's a very big embankment. All right.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you. I know some of the newer people aren't familiar with this project, but it's easy to get to. It's right around the corner from the one we were, the Kazanjian project.
They had fairly detailed plans made up when they did want to expand the parking lot. Are they referring at all to those plans?
No, the only plan they provided, and I have, you know, their plan, this is the same as-built plan they basically used to show the location of the concrete pad. What I'm trying to locate is the file that was withdrawn. And unfortunately, the city doesn't keep any files that were withdrawn. So the detailed plans were developed for mostly where they were proposing to pave that already approved gravel area. Unfortunately, we don't have the physical records of it because they withdrew the application. We do have the complete file on the order and the COC that was issued to have that gravel in the first place. So,
All right? Okay. We have a couple things to sign. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
By Commissioner Varnum, seconded by Commissioner Lynch. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the ayes have it, and good night.